The toaster's burning the bread again. Amber. Seriously. His voice came from behind the bedroom door, cold and indifferent, just like every Saturday morning since my third trimester began. I stood in the kitchen, cradling a belly that felt like a boulder, watching a faint trail of smoke curl up from the last 2 slices of bread in our chipped old toaster. I yanked the plug, opened the window, and let the cold Arizona air flood our tiny kitchen. This house used to feel like a dream. Now it felt more like a slow suffocation. My name is Amber Whitman. I'm 29 years old, living on the edge of Flagstaff, Arizona, and 3 weeks away from delivering my first child. The house Derek and I bought 2 years ago was supposed to be the beginning of everything, a cozy retreat, a place to raise a family. But now, it's just where I'm quietly falling apart. Derek, my husband, is 33 and works as an investment manager for a private firm in Phoenix. Technically, we live together, but lately, it feels more like I'm renting space in his absence. Ever since I got pregnant, he's been disappearing on the weekends, saying he needs to detox by visiting his parents' lodge in Colorado Springs. A 2-hour drive. No real reason. Just a routine, he calls it. At first, I tried to understand. I thought maybe he was nervous, maybe scared to become a father. But when you're up at 2 a.m. gripping your stomach through a false contraction, and the person who swore to love you is off fishing with his dad, something shifts inside you. "You're on maternity leave now," he said one afternoon when I asked him to help wipe down the kitchen floor. "You have more time than I do." I had slipped and nearly fallen that morning trying to clean under the cabinets. He didn't ask if I was okay, didn't even glance up from his phone. I remember sitting in the nursery that night, the scent of fresh paint still lingering in the air, my hand resting on the side of my belly. Isla kicked. She always kicked when I was upset, almost like she was trying to say, "I'm here, Mom. I feel it too." Derek used to be kind, thoughtful. He used to call me Sunshine. Used to bring me herbal tea when I felt sick, rub my shoulders while we planned baby names. He once said he wanted a daughter with my eyes and my laugh. But since that second pink line appeared on the pregnancy test, it's like someone switched him off. No more smiles, no more connection, just a cold stranger sharing my bed. A few weeks ago, I forgot to pick up his favorite cold brew from the store. His response, "You stay home all day and couldn't manage one thing, right?" I stared at him, my throat tightening. I could have said a million things in that moment, but I didn't. I was exhausted, and I knew if I said anything, he'd chalk it up to pregnancy hormones. Some nights, I lie awake wondering if I made the biggest mistake of my life. But then Isla shifts inside me, and it quiets those thoughts for a while. I try to keep some normalcy. I write in my blog, Diary of a Desert Mom. I share photos of sunsets, little recipes I invent when I can't sleep, snippets of what it feels like to grow a human inside you while the world outside stays silent. It's the one thing that still makes me feel like I matter. Last Friday, I returned from the grocery store carrying bags that felt like weights strapped to my spine. I pushed open the front door and found Derek sprawled across the couch, flipping through channels. "What's for dinner?" he asked without even looking up. I bought a whole chicken. I was thinking soup. Soup? In this heat? My mom would never serve hot soup in the summer. "You always make weird stuff, Amber." He chuckled. I didn't. I walked into the kitchen and started peeling carrots, biting the inside of my cheek to keep the tears from falling. Isla kicked again. Hard. The next morning, as he slipped on a crisp shirt, Derek casually announced, "Mom and Dad want to do a little trip to the cabin next week. You should come. One last getaway before the baby." I froze. "Next week? I'm due in less than 3 weeks, Derek. Dr. Conway said labor could start at any time." He waved me off. "You always overthink. A few days in the mountains will be good for you and the baby. Mom says fresh air helps." I said nothing, because I knew at that point arguing didn't matter. He had already decided, but something in my chest snapped. I wasn't just nervous. I was afraid. Genuinely afraid that if something happened, if labor came early, if I needed help, he wouldn't be there. Not really. And I was right. The morning was unusually quiet, overcast with a thick grayness that seemed to press down on everything. Derek was unusually cheerful, humming to himself as he zipped up the last of his duffel bags. I had barely slept the night before. Too many cramps, too much heaviness. I told him I wasn't sure about the trip, that I didn't feel right. His only response was, "You're always so dramatic. It's probably just gas." He'd already loaded the car. All that was left was for me to get in. I stood on the porch, clutching my overnight bag and rubbing the underside of my belly. Something about the weight felt different today. Lower, tighter. But I swallowed the unease and followed him to the car. I didn't even make it past the passenger seat. As I lowered myself onto the seat, I felt a sudden gush of warmth, and a dampness spread quickly through the thin cotton of my dress. I looked down, there was no mistaking it. My water had broken. "Derek," my voice trembled. "I think my water just broke. We need to go to the hospital. Now." He turned to look at me, frowning like I had just dropped mustard on his favorite shirt. Then he looked down at the seat. "Are you serious right now?" he snapped. "You couldn't hold it for 5 more minutes?" I stared at him, stunned. "I need help. Please. I'm in labor." He groaned loudly, cut me off, and flung open the driver's side door. "Great. Just great. You soaked the leather seats. This is why I didn't want to take the SUV." He walked around to my side, muttering something under his breath about ruined trips and inconsiderate timing, then pulled open my door and gestured for me to get out. "You're not seriously," I began, but my voice broke. "Amber, I'm not letting this car smell like a delivery room. Call a cab or something. My parents are already waiting. I don't have time for this." He reached into the back, yanked out my suitcase, and dropped it onto the curb. Then he got in the car, slammed the door, and drove away. For a few seconds, I stood frozen in place, too stunned to react. The contractions hadn't even started yet, but the panic already had. I was alone in front of my own house, water still leaking into my shoes, and the man who was supposed to be by my side had just abandoned me for a weekend getaway. My hand shook as I reached for my phone, trying to remember how to dial 911 when my brain was spinning. But before I could finish, a silver Toyota sedan pulled up beside me. The passenger window rolled down. "Amber." It was Jenna Morales, my neighbor. Mid-30s, kind eyes, lived 2 houses down. She had seen me walking Isla's room furniture in, offered to help paint, and sometimes dropped off homemade banana bread with walnuts. Now, she looked at me with wide, horrified eyes. "Oh my God, get in. You're in labor." She didn't wait for permission. She jumped out, opened the door, helped me into the passenger seat, and fastened my seatbelt with gentle fingers. Then she peeled out of the driveway like a woman on a mission. All the way to the hospital. She held my hand tightly, asking questions I barely registered. "How far apart are the contractions? Has your doctor said anything about early labor? Do you have your hospital bag?" I couldn't speak. I was crying, silent tears that wouldn't stop. The shame, the betrayal, the fear, it all collided inside me like a wave I couldn't hold back. Jenna's voice softened. "Amber, where's Derek?" I just looked away. That silence said everything. At the ER entrance, Jenna yelled for help. Nurses rushed in with a wheelchair, and I was whisked away under sterile lights and the scent of antiseptic. My mind raced in circles, but one thought repeated over and over. He left me. He left me. He left me. They rushed me into the maternity ward. I heard voices. "She's dilating fast. Keep breathing. Is this her first?" But I barely heard them. All I could think was that I was about to bring a child into the world alone. Hours blurred into each other. Pain came in waves, crashing against me until I thought I would shatter. But I held on. For Isla. for the life inside me that deserved better. And then she was here. The sound of her cry pierced the room, and something inside me cracked open, not in pain but in awe. I had done it. I had brought a little girl into the world without him, without anyone but the nurses and Jenna, and it was the most beautiful, terrifying, powerful thing I'd ever experienced. I was still trembling when I woke up in the recovery room. White walls. For line. Faint beeping of monitors. And Jenna, sitting beside me, holding a cold cup of coffee, like she had been there the whole time. "You're awake," she whispered. "Thank God." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. "Isla." "She's perfect," Jenna smiled. "A little girl. Healthy. Strong. Just like her mama." I exhaled, and tears slipped down my cheeks again. This time not from fear, but relief. Jenna reached out and squeezed my hand. "I called your parents. They're on their way." For a moment, I couldn't believe what I'd heard. I hadn't spoken to them in almost a year. They hadn't approved of my marriage to Derek. We had grown apart, but now, in my most broken moment, they were coming. That's when it hit me. I hadn't just gone into labor that morning. I had let go of something. Something I had been holding on to for far too long. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. The light in the room was pale and fluorescent, the kind that buzzes softly in the silence, the kind you only find in hospital ceilings and bad memories. My eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the brightness, and for a few seconds I forgot where I was. Then I moved, and pain stitched itself through my lower abdomen. The birth, the labor, the cold, wet sidewalk, Derek, all of it returned at once, like waking from a dream and realizing it was a nightmare you lived. A tiny cry echoed softly across the room. I turned my head. There she was, Isla, wrapped in a pale yellow blanket, sleeping soundly in the plastic bassinet beside my bed. Her lips pursed into the faintest pout, like she was dreaming something sweeter than anything this world had yet offered her. Jenna was still there. She looked up from a magazine she clearly wasn't reading and smiled. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her face showed the kind of exhaustion you only wear when you've been holding someone else's pain too. "You're awake," she said, her voice trembling with relief. "And so is she, but just barely." I nodded weakly, my throat too dry to speak. She poured a glass of water and handed it to me. For a moment we sat in silence. There was so much I didn't have the strength to say. Then Jenna reached into her purse. "There's something you should know." She unlocked her phone, tapped twice, and turned the screen toward me. I recognized the video instantly. It was me, standing outside the car, visibly pregnant, a growing pool of amniotic fluid spreading around my feet. The camera wasn't close, but it was enough. Derek's voice was audible. His expression. The moment he slammed the car door and drove away. A stranger had captured it, a med student who happened to be passing by. The video had made its way to social media, and in less than 48 hours, it had over 2 million views. My chest tightened. I reached out slowly, touching the screen like it might burn. "No one knew who you were at first," Jenna explained, "but someone traced the license plate. Derek's name got out. His job, his parents, everything." I swallowed hard. My ears were ringing. Part of me felt like I was floating above it all, watching someone else's life unravel on a 6-inch screen. "We kept your identity private," Jenna said quickly. "All anyone knows is what the video shows. A husband abandoning his pregnant wife on the side of the road." My fingers clenched the hospital blanket. I didn't know what to feel, grief, shame, fury, or something else entirely. Something freeing. "And there's more," Jenna continued gently. "My husband, Mark, works in engineering. His firm's CEO is close with Derek's old company. Word got around fast. At first, they said they'd deal with it quietly, but the video kept spreading. Articles, reaction videos, hashtags. It didn't stop." I looked at her, barely able to form the words. "What happened?" She sighed. "He was suspended. Then this morning his contract was officially terminated. Conduct severely damaging to company image. I stared at her. My chest rose and fell. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant, but all I felt was empty. What about his parents? I whispered. Jenna hesitated. It's not pretty. People started recognizing them, too. Neighbors have come forward. Stories about yelling, about how they treated you. Someone even posted a video from Claire's birthday party last year, her mocking you in front of guests. I closed my eyes. I remembered that night too well. I had been 7 months pregnant. Claire had laughed at the scarf I made her, calling it cheap and desperate, then told everyone I waddled like a duck. Jenna kept speaking. Their lodge, Pine Grove? They had to shut it down. People are boycotting. Protest signs out front. They had to deactivate their business page because of the comments. The room was still. Isla stirred in her bassinet, but didn't wake. I'm not telling you this to gloat, Jenna said, placing a hand gently on mine. I just want you to know, this time, you're not invisible. People saw what happened, and they cared. I looked at her hand on mine. I didn't have words, only a quiet breath that slipped from my lips. Thank you. You don't owe me thanks, she said, standing. Just promise me one thing. I looked up. Don't go back, she said, her voice gentle but fierce. Whatever he says, whatever they offer, don't go back. I won't, I said, and for the first time, I meant it. She nodded and walked toward the door. Then she paused. Oh, almost forgot. I left you something. A nurse came in moments later and handed me a small envelope and a post-it note with Jenna's number. Inside the envelope was a USB drive and a short note. Security footage from the hospital entrance. You may want it someday. Evidence matters. Jay, I held it in my hands, and for the first time in months they weren't shaking. The fog of the past year was beginning to lift, and in its place stood something solid, real, not revenge, not rage, but clarity. I turned to Isla, sleeping softly in the bassinet, her tiny fists curled, her chest rising with each breath. I leaned closer, brushed her cheek, and whispered, No one's ever going to leave us on a sidewalk again. I promise. And right then, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. 3 days after I gave birth, the world outside my hospital room had become unrecognizable, especially for the man who once called me his wife. I was just beginning to find my rhythm as a mother. Feedings every 2 hours, diaper changes in a blur. My parents, Ronald and Esther, had practically moved into the hospital with me. My mom wouldn't leave Isla's side, and my dad, who had always been more reserved, had taken to sitting by the window, flipping through the newspaper while pretending not to watch me with misty eyes. Then Jenna returned. She walked into the room holding a modest bouquet of white daisies and a phone in her hand, her face noticeably more serious than usual. Amber, she said softly, have you seen the news lately? I shook my head. My phone had been off since delivery, mostly at my mother's insistence, and truthfully I hadn't missed it. I had no interest in Facebook memories or congratulatory texts from people who hadn't spoken to me in months. Jenna sat beside me and opened a video. You need to see this. It was the same clip, the one taken by the med student, but this version had been edited. Subtitled. It began with the words, He left her in labor, then drove away. Then came the footage. Me, visibly pregnant, standing by the car, my dress soaked, clutching my belly. Derek storming around the vehicle, shouting something about leather seats, then slamming the door and peeling off. My suitcase thudding onto the sidewalk. The video cut to black. The words reappeared. This is her story. I stared in silence. My throat felt tight. The video had over 3.4 million views. It exploded overnight, Jenna explained. People are furious. Influencers, podcasts, TikTokers, everyone's talking about it. Talking about me, I said bitterly. No, talking about him. She began scrolling through comments. He should be arrested. This is spousal neglect, period. She's better off without him. That baby's lucky to have her. There were thousands like that. Some were angry. Others were heartbreaking. Dozens of women sharing their own stories of abandonment, betrayal during pregnancy, or being left to raise a child alone. For a moment, I just sat there in stunned silence. Derek had always counted on one thing, my silence, my willingness to keep things private, to keep the peace. That silence was now broken by millions of voices. It didn't stop there, Jenna continued. People found his old LinkedIn, his firm's page. They left comments, shared the video. It reached the board of directors. And then they cut him loose. He was fired. She nodded. Terminated. Conduct damaging to company reputation. His name's basically radioactive now. I didn't know what to feel. Not joy. Not yet. Just a strange, quiet exhale I hadn't realized I'd been holding for months. Jenna leaned forward. And it's not just him. His parents are taking heat too. Neighbors are coming forward. Someone even leaked a recording from Claire's lodge, her calling you a spoiled stray cat who trapped her son with a pregnancy. I blinked slowly. I remembered that night too well. Claire had whispered that insult behind her wine glass, loud enough for her friends to laugh. The internet's not letting it slide, Jenna said. People started leaving negative reviews on their business pages. Some even staged a protest outside their main lodge. They had to close for the weekend. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to process it. I'd lived with their contempt in silence for years, and now it was being laid bare for the world to see. But this wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It was about truth. A truth too loud to ignore, too real to dismiss. Jenna reached into her purse and pulled out a small card. I know you didn't ask for this, but Mark called someone he knows. A woman named Nina Caldwell. She's a family law attorney. Sharp. Calm. She can help. I took the card and ran my thumb over the embossed name. I wasn't sure what to do yet, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this, dragging around the broken pieces of a marriage that had tried to erase me. I'm not telling you to sue him into the ground, Jenna said, standing. But you deserve better than this. And Isla deserves better too. After she left, I sat there for a long time, watching Isla sleep beside me. Her tiny chest rose and fell with perfect rhythm, a rhythm that didn't care about scandals or shame. I looked down at the USB drive Jenna had given me, still unopened in my hospital drawer. And I knew it was time to open it. I left the hospital on a crisp morning that smelled like autumn and new beginnings. My parents had transformed the guest room of their home in northern Flagstaff into a cozy nursery. Soft yellow walls, a white crib beside the window, and a rocking chair that creaked with every push. Each detail quietly said, "You're home now. You're safe." Isla settled in as if she'd always belonged there. And in a strange way, so did I. But the texts began almost immediately. From Derek. At first, they were filled with panic. "We need to talk. You overreacted. You're making this worse than it is." Then they turned to guilt. "My parents are being harassed because of this. We've lost everything. Are you happy now?" And then came the blame. "You're the reason I lost my job. If you hadn't made such a scene, none of this would have happened." I never replied, because there was nothing left to say. That night, I sat down at the kitchen table with my dad. He didn't push, just waited, letting the silence breathe. "I want to end it," I said finally. "All of it. For good." He nodded slowly. "Then we'll do it right." He gave me Nina Caldwell's number. The next morning I called. Nina was everything Jenna said she'd be. Sharp, composed, and with a voice that made you feel like no matter how bad it had been, you were finally in capable hands. I brought her the hospital video, the voicemail, the texts. I even handed over the old recordings I'd secretly kept. Derek yelling at me during pregnancy, mocking my cravings, slamming doors when I cried at night. She didn't flinch. She just listened. Then she said, "We have more than enough." We filed for divorce the following week. I requested full custody and a child support arrangement based on Derek's income prior to termination. Nina insisted we include a motion to freeze any existing financial assets until a fair division could be made. Derek hadn't responded to the petition, so we were prepared to escalate. Then came the call. His tone was no longer apologetic. It was combative. "You can't just divorce me over one mistake. You're ruining my life." I remained calm, pressed record on my phone, and let Nina handle the rest. "He's refusing to sign," she told me the next day. "But don't worry. We'll petition the court for a summons. If he doesn't show, we'll proceed without him." And just like that, the man who once claimed to control everything in our lives lost all leverage. 2 days before the court hearing, Derek sent a long email. Part apology, part attack. "I want nothing to do with that child. If you're raising her, that's on you. I'm broke. I can't support anyone." Nina only smiled. "Perfect. That kind of written refusal only helps us." The courtroom was colder than I expected. Sterile, like a waiting room for lives about to be dissected. Derek showed up alone. No lawyer, just a crumpled stack of notes and that familiar arrogance he wore like cologne. "She's trying to ruin me," he said to the judge. "She's emotionally unstable, not fit to raise a child." Nina didn't even blink. She pulled out a tablet, played the video. Me, standing soaked on the sidewalk. Belly round, contractions starting. Derek yelling. The suitcase hitting the curb. The SUV disappearing into the distance. Silence fell over the room like snow. Then Nina played the voicemail. His voice cold and dismissive. "Call a cab or something. I'm not missing this trip." When it ended, she looked at the judge and said calmly, "This isn't just neglect. It's abandonment." The judge nodded slowly. Derek finally crumbled. He signed the papers, but he still refused to pay. "No job," he said. "No savings. I've got nothing left." That might have worked if he hadn't lied. Turns out, Derek's firm, trying to distance themselves from the viral backlash, had quietly submitted his financial disclosures to the court, including a hefty bonus he'd tried to move into a private brokerage account. Nina filed an emergency motion that day. The court froze the funds. I didn't want to punish him. Not really. I just wanted security, stability, a promise that Isla would never be punished for her father's cowardice. The day the court approved our child support claim, I stepped outside with Isla bundled against my chest, the sun filtering through amber leaves above us. I breathed in deep. I had once begged Derek for love. Now I stood on solid ground, no longer begging, just becoming. You think the story ends when the ink dries on the divorce papers, but sometimes the aftermath is its own storm. In the weeks that followed, Derek's name became a kind of local legend, spoken with either disgust or disbelief. The husband who abandoned his pregnant wife. His face never appeared in the viral video, but it didn't matter. People knew. Word spreads fast in a town like Flagstaff, and even faster when you've built your entire identity around being a respectable family man in finance. He stopped texting after the court froze his accounts. No more fake apologies. No more blaming me. Just silence. It was almost worse that way. Jenna kept me updated when I didn't want to look. "You know his house is up for foreclosure," she said one morning while bringing fresh fruit and muffins. "Neighbors say he hasn't been seen in days. Lights off. Grass overgrown." I nodded slowly, sipping tea while Isla napped on my chest. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel pity. I just felt done. His parents weren't spared either. Pine Grove Lodge never reopened. The protesters had left, but the damage was done. Photos surfaced of Claire yelling at customers. One Yelp review said, "The pastries taste like judgment and cold shoulders." People stopped coming. Sponsors pulled out. The once beloved family lodge faded into rumor and memory. Then the text started again. Not from Derek, but from numbers I didn't recognize. You ruined my son. Do you feel better now that he's jobless? You could have handled this quietly. I blocked them all. Silence is louder than any argument. One day, a plain envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a letter, handwritten, the loops of the script uncertain, almost trembling. Amber, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know I was wrong. I raised a son who never learned how to respect the women who loved him. I failed you. I failed Isla. I don't expect anything from you, but I hope someday you find peace. Wishing you and your daughter a better life than the one we gave you. Claire Whitman. I folded the letter slowly and tucked it away in a drawer. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because even that was closure. I didn't forgive her. Not really. But I no longer needed to carry the weight of her cruelty. Let her sit with it now. Let the silence echo back into the rooms she once filled with smugness and wine. A few weeks later, I heard Derek had left the state. Someone said he was working in a diner in Oregon. Someone else claimed he'd changed his name. I didn't check. I didn't care. That chapter of my life had already turned brittle and burned. I returned to work slowly. With the help of my parents and Jenna, I built a routine. Isla thrived. She giggled often, especially when I played music in the mornings or held her up to see her reflection. She had Derek's dimples, but only when she laughed, and that felt like a mercy. One afternoon, I was pushing Isla's stroller through the park when a middle-aged woman stopped me. You're Amber, right? I hesitated. Yes. She smiled, eyes kind. I follow your blog, Diary of a Desert Mom. I just wanted to say you've inspired me. You made me believe it's okay to start over. I blinked. The wind shifted, rustling the trees above us. Thank you, I said quietly. That night, as the house settled into quiet, I sat on the back porch with Jenna. Isla was asleep in my arms. Jenna brought ginger tea. She always brought ginger tea now. You know, she said, you're allowed to be happy again. I am happy, I said. No, I mean really happy. I looked out at the stars. I'm learning. And I was. Every day, healing came slowly, like sunlight through fog. Not all at once. Not with some dramatic transformation. Just a series of quiet, steady moments where life started to feel like mine again. Jenna visited every week, sometimes bringing fresh berries, sometimes nothing but her time. She never asked for anything in return, just sat with me on the porch while Isla napped or played with her feet in the air. She told me stories about her job, about growing up in Tucson, about the time she almost became a travel photographer but chose steadiness instead. I started to realize she wasn't just my neighbor, she was family now. It was during one of those long porch afternoons that I first met Evan. He stepped out of Jenna's car, tall, quiet, sunburnt from a weekend hike. She waved him over casually. Amber, this is my son, Evan. He's the structural engineer I told you about, the one who spends too much time fixing bridges and not enough sleeping. He smiled, a bit shy, and held out a calloused hand. It's nice to finally meet you. I've heard a lot. I raised a brow. All good, I hope. He grinned. Only the parts worth repeating. That first conversation lasted maybe 10 minutes, but something about his presence stayed with me. Calm, centered, like he wasn't trying to impress or rescue me, just be there. Over the weeks, Evan became a quiet rhythm in our lives. He stopped by when he was in town, carried grocery bags without being asked, held Isla when I needed both hands free, fixed the squeaky hinge on the back door without saying a word about it. He never pushed, never asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. He was just there. One evening, after dinner with my parents and Jenna, I found myself alone on the porch again. Isla had fallen asleep early. The autumn air was crisp, and I was sipping hot cider when Evan stepped outside and handed me a small wooden bracelet. Carved into the surface were two names, Amber, Isla. I don't know where I fit into your story, he said, voice soft. But if there's a place, I'd like to find it. I didn't respond right away. My heart wasn't broken anymore, but it wasn't whole either. It was still stitching itself back together in quiet, stubborn ways. So I just reached out, placed my hand over his, and whispered, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm not afraid of it anymore. He smiled, not the kind that demands anything, the kind that waits. The following weeks were quiet and sweet. Evan didn't become everything. He didn't need to. He just became something good. A safe space, a steady hand. He made Isla laugh in a way I hadn't seen before. Big, open laughter that filled our living room like light. One day, Jenna leaned over her tea and said, I've never seen you like this. I laughed. Like what? Like someone who finally believes they deserve softness. It took a moment for those words to land, but when they did, I believed her. Winter came early that year. Snow on the pine roofs. Isla's tiny footprints in knit booties by the back door. The house smelled of cinnamon, and the fire crackled every night. I wasn't rushing toward anything. Not love. Not marriage. Not some replacement for what I had lost. Because I hadn't lost myself. I had reclaimed her. One slow, brave, impossible step at a time. And as I rocked Isla to sleep beside the fire, Evan humming a lullaby from the kitchen, I realized something. This wasn't a second chance at love. It was the first time I'd ever had it at all. Some people say motherhood is sacrifice. Others say it's strength. For me, it became clarity. I used to believe that becoming a mother meant losing something. My independence, my identity, my worth as a woman outside of being someone's wife. But Isla taught me otherwise. She didn't ask for perfection. She didn't need me to be composed or strong all the time. She just needed me to be there, to keep showing up. And I did, every morning, through sleepless nights, through tears I didn't even try to hide anymore. And slowly, that's how I came back to myself. After everything collapsed, I realized something nobody had warned me about. Survival is loud at first. Courtrooms, lawyers, public shame. But healing is quiet. Healing is Isla sleeping with her hand curled around my finger. It's walking into the kitchen and not flinching. It's writing again, not to escape, but because I have something to say. My blog changed. The tone, the stories, readers noticed. They didn't just want recipes or baby updates. They wanted the truth. They wanted strength they could see and feel. Not the polished kind, but the kind with scar tissue. And so I gave it to them. One morning, I posted the clip, the video, the full, unblurred version. Me, 9 months pregnant, on the sidewalk, Derek walking away. No music, no commentary, just the truth. And at the end, I added one sentence. He left when I needed him most, but I stayed. For her. For me. The response was overwhelming. Not just likes or views, but letters. Stories. Women from every state. Survivors. Mothers. Daughters. They told me I gave them permission to start over. To let go of guilt they didn't earn. To walk away from silence. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. A month later, I received another envelope in the mail. This one from Oregon. No letter, just a single photograph. Derek, in a diner uniform, head down, bussing tables. Someone had snapped the picture quietly and forwarded it to me with no caption. I looked at it for a long time, and then I threw it away. Not in anger, in peace. Some stories don't need to be reopened. They simply end. Weeks passed. Isla learned to sit up on her own. Then crawl. Then clap. Her laughter became the heartbeat of our home. Evan kept visiting, never asking, never rushing. He repaired the fence one weekend and built a bookshelf for Isla the next. He didn't fill the silence with promises. He filled it with presence. Then one evening, as snow fell outside the windows and the fire cast amber light across the room, he took my hand. Amber, he said gently, you've already walked through fire. I don't want to be your rescue story. I just want to be your next chapter, if you'll have me. I looked down at our joined hands, then over at Isla playing with her blocks. My voice was calm, certain. You're not the next chapter, Evan. You're the story I never thought I deserved. We didn't rush anything. We didn't announce anything. There were no champagne toasts or elaborate speeches, just a quiet agreement between two people who knew the value of time and truth, and love that arrives late but stays. Now I sit here, writing this with Isla asleep in her crib, the scent of pine and winter in the air, and Evan humming quietly as he folds laundry in the next room. There's no drama in this moment, just peace. And if I could tell the woman I was back then, sitting on the edge of the sidewalk, abandoned and bleeding and terrified, I'd whisper, you don't have to go back. You don't have to make it work. You don't have to carry him any further. Walk away. You're allowed. Because sometimes the most radical vow a woman can make isn't to someone else. It's to herself. And this is mine. I vow to protect the light in me, to show my daughter what love looks like when it's real, to never settle for someone who runs when I bleed, and to never again stay silent just to keep the peace. This isn't just my revenge story. It's my redemption, and it begins now.